Seeking the wise.
With Aaron and Alexander discussing the Just philosophy.
Covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise podcast. I am Aaron Keith. Along with me is awesome Alexander.
Nice to be described that way. Thank you. Good to see everybody and be with everybody. And thank you for chiming in. Let's see what we're going to get into today. Share with us the topics we're going to be talking about today. I don't have any idea.
So on this episode, we have another 2 stories from Reddit of Am I Overreacting, where people from all over post their stories to get advice or opinions from people on Reddit, which can sometimes be not so conscious or with the perspective of wellness, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to read some stories, understand some experiences that you guys out there are having, and then respond rather than react, utilizing the Just philosophy that we talk about on this podcast for all 170 plus episodes. All right, so story number 1. Title is, Am I Overreacting for Being Furious with My Girlfriend for Making Fun of Poor People? My girlfriend just took and sent me a picture of a homeless man dumpster diving at her workplace. She works at a grocery store, with the text saying, "Yummy, yummy, scavenging for rotten food," knowing full well that I used to be homeless and dumpster dive for food. I'm absolutely fuming. She grew up upper middle class and far removed from any struggle except for having alcoholic parents. Acts very uppity and posh about money, luxuries, and describes having an expensive taste, acts like it's a cool personality trait. She looks down on people less fortunate, but still likes to act like she had it rough and has empathy for marginalized people, which is in complete contradiction to how she truly acts. She's also high-functioning autistic and seems to be unaware of some basic unwritten social rules and standards. That's why it's hard to fully put the blame on her in these kinds of situations. I think it's really difficult for her to perceive how she might affect other people and how she acts. Aside from these small character flaws that she has, she's an amazing person and partner overall, willing to put in a lot of work and effort into the relationship. I've never felt this loved and cared for in my life. Breaking up is not an option for me. How do I navigate the resentment that's building from this type of behavior?
Man.
Alexander, yeah, this is the interesting one. I know, like, the beginning probably caught you off guard, but I liked how, but it was interesting how he brought in that she is a high-functioning autistic person, and so there's a lot of grace that goes in here, and I think this can be a caution to a lot of people who see how other people are behaving, and then rather than jump to judgment immediately, we don't know this, what these people are going through or what their life situations are. So there's always some caution there, and to have some compassion for everyone in every situation.
Yes, and it was nice that the person that wrote in brought it around and shared some of the good that they notice. But how someone treats others or views the world isn't an easy fix. It's for many people that fall under this category, they didn't necessarily have an optimal father figure, or many times they didn't have a father figure or somebody to play that masculine energy, which teaches respect. The masculine energy is what teaches respect and integrity and those types of things. And that's what this is around, about how you respect judging people. But that's a big one. And, I find it interesting when people want to see in their partner that they're interested in growth, and they will sometimes even justify it. But many times when I ask, well, what are the things that they're growing through? Like, give me the examples of changes that they've actually done. Many times they don't have that answer. So see, it can be well, I really like her, so I'm going to see that she we talk about growth, and for some people that equates to doing the work, and it's not. It's that it would be similar if they could have a discussion and get on the same page about her not wanting to look at people like that, realizing that she does, and accept that, hey, this might not be her fault, but it's her responsibility. But see, all this has to come from her. If it comes from him, she's going to feel judged, and there's going to more than likely be a competition issue there and a resistance and that type of thing. So in my view, this really comes down to when it's a major issue in a relationship, which is typically around religion, finances, children, or integrity issues like this. This is an integrity issue that he don't like her judging this homeless person or people in general. And maybe she doesn't realize that she does it, or doesn't realize that it has the negative effect that it does. But again, that's not an excuse. It would have to be her wanting to correct that, and then in a loving way, asking him to, in a loving way, remind her when she does do it. And over time together, they could help shift that energy with that practice for years, working together in that way. To see if she takes him as any type of butthole, or taking her power away, or judging her, or anything like that, then he's very limited in how much he can assist her in that. But I feel like that it's important to know that if somebody is truly growing and they're getting better in something or towards something, then most anybody is willing to invest time and energy into somebody that they care about. But it's going to come down to whether they truly see results or not. And those results are going to be determined on how much the person really wants to make that change or that shift.
So I never thought I'd hear you say butthole on this podcast. So
Well, I didn't say the a-hole, so.
I know. It took me a second to understand what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
So I think it would be challenging for him, because I can kind of see a path where he could bring this up, because I mean, he said that he used to do all these things that she's now judging somebody and laughing kind of at for. But depending on the space that she's in when he brings it up, right place, right time, right situation, right location, all that, she may get offended or judged. She may feel judged, because he may be like, hey, do you know how that makes me feel? I used to be like this. I used to be on hard times, and so it feels like to me that you're now making fun of how I used to be. And so she could be offended, because when we get called out, a lot of times we have self-judgment and self-shame, and that can be really strong and can overshadow the actual truth in the situation, which is her looking at herself and being like, did I do that? But all of a sudden the shame and the judgment for herself comes in and clouds that, and now she's in an emotional reaction.
Yes, and that's the defense mechanism that most humans have in them. So that's why there has to be that agreement and understanding that we're working together here as a team. I'm not belittling you. I'm not judging you. I'm just letting you know, after you do that action, see, he don't have to go into the whole level of, you're judging me because I used to be that like every time. It's just a simple, like, there it is. Like, you can come up with a little phrase to where it's in and out very quickly, because the only point is to bring it up to that person's attention. There's nothing to discuss. So that's why something like a soft phrase can be the reminder, so that that person doesn't have to go through feeling like they're being called out all the time. And the more subtle that is, see, when you get creative as partners and you say, hey, when I do that, just say red light, then see, that's not necessarily associated with the issue. So you can be in a public setting and be in two separate conversations, and he might overhear her say something and then him just say red light, and nobody else knows what that is. And it's a reminder, hey, you just did it again. But see, she has to want to receive that. And then that doesn't feel like she's being berated over and over and over, because she's asking, hey, please let me know when I do this. I'm not realizing that I'm doing it. I want to stop this action. And if that's earnest and both, are earnest in their practice together with that, then two people can do amazing work together. I mean, this is what I call conscious relationships. But it shouldn't be a long, drawn-out discussion each time. There doesn't have to be a validation or reason why. Why he, like when he goes to her, if he says something like, "Why did you do that again?" Like, see, that's not helping because it's putting her on guard. Where if it's just like red light, then go through the day, an hour later, red light, because it's for her to help her process, not them to fix or him to fix in her. And that's the way it can come across sometimes.
So this one, and I honestly, I didn't read all the way through, so I didn't know like really what it said other than like the first paragraph, and I just knew that, okay, this would be good for the show. The question that he asked was, how do I navigate the resentment that's building from this type of behavior? And you and I just had a conversation about resentment in my own life, like what that emotion boils down to, because I've always, I've been working with you for 8-9 years now. I've known you for 9 years, I think. And I have a lot of sinus issues, and you've told me over the years that it is about resentment, and then you just checked in with me earlier today to see if I understood what you meant by that, because you've been telling me that for years now. And we finally got clear on what resentment was and how it was different from frustration, because to me, I lumped it all together, and resentment was a very like elusive emotion for me to mentally grasp the difference between and identify in my life. So let's kind of pull some from that conversation that you and I had and bring it into this, because it really is dealing with the same type of emotions for him that I've had in my life that has kind of led me to have some chronic sinus issues.
Yes. And do you remember the phrase that I suggested? I like to say that every emotion can be broke down to a phrase, and that helps you as an investigator that the Just philosophy talks about, to be that investigator rather than the judge. But do you remember the phrase that I suggested?
Yeah, it was along the lines of, I can't believe this is happening again.
Yes. Anytime that phrase comes up of, I can't believe she said that, or they did that, or they're doing this, or they got away with that, that is connected to resentment. So see, to answer his question, the person writing this, is that, in my view, he hasn't truly accepted her for who she is. He sees her for who he wants her to be. And therefore, when she does that, he's resentful because he don't want her to be that person. So, and she keeps doing it. So it builds, resentment is is cousins to frustration. Frustration's in the moment. Resentment is in the past. So it's normally the next day that the resentment is created, or the following week, or that type of thing. So the way we stay away from resentment is we realize it's a recognition that acceptance isn't truly 100% there. Whether it's around sports or personal relationships or whatever, it's that the person isn't truly accepting, no, this is the way that it is. And I've got to accept that first. Now, if I would like to experience it being different, then I got to first check in to see if this other person in this situation wants it to be different. Because I didn't hear that in any of the writing that he wrote, to where he said she's really bothered by this and really wants to change this in her life and, sees it as a negative pattern. I didn't hear that, in just this writing. So see, that's the first thing, is that if she doesn't want to change that, or she doesn't see a problem in it, then there's nothing he's going to do but experience more resentment, besides just truly accepting her for who she is and not needing her to be different in any type of way. And many people stay in relationships like that, and what they do is they wind up apologizing constantly for their partner. And they just become kind of numb to it. And, anything that you're around long enough, you will adapt to. And so, see, there's always going to be change between two people. It's either change for the so-called benefit of the relationship, or change for the individuals changing in different ways and becoming less and less intimate over time.
Yeah, so the more that he's around it, when you said he's going to adapt, but a lot of that adaption may be detachment.
Detachment. Yes. Yes. In that adapting, it's normally detachment. It's a giving up or giving in. And sometimes you hear people say, well, that's just who they are, but when they say that, see, there's a disgust at the end of that. There's more of an acceptance than possibly what this guy is dealing with. But that's what's got to be, clear first, is like this is an integrity issue. And when people don't carry similar levels of integrity, they're going to be in friction a lot. And that's why values are, in my view, more important than love or attraction, because the values is what you're going to operate out of day in and day out. And so beauty, attraction, even love can wane for a lot of people, because love for most people is conditional. So that's why if you have a foundation of similar values, then you're not going through day after day with these types of judgment. It's not building towards intimacy. That only happens if she wants to change it as bad or worse than he wants it changed. And then they develop a plan together and they work together on this. And another thing I suggest, like right away, is that he has some kind of issue just as big as this for her. And if he would be willing to say, hey, this is my thing that is for you, and I would like for you to help me to work on that while I'm helping you to work on that. See, it brings an even playing field. And that's vulnerability. That's a willingness to say, hey, I'm not better than you by helping you. Let's be equals here. And I'm going to pull something that's very hard for me to work on, and I want you to point that out. And mine will be green light. So yours can be red light, mine will be green light. And nobody has to know that we're ever helping each other in a social situation or anything like that. And to me, that becomes a beautiful art when it's done optimally. But again, the main thing here is I hadn't heard that she wants to change that
Yeah.
or sees a problem with it.
Yeah, and with most of these stories, the person who writes it is usually the person who it's like their responsibility to make the adjustment because they're the ones suffering.
Yeah.
So this is and to be honest, he kind of wrote that in his question. How do I navigate the resentment that's building from this type of behavior? So
Yes.
he was right to kind of ask the question, what can he do? It wasn't like, what can I do to change her?
Mm-hmm.
It was, what can he do to navigate the resentment? So it kind of seems like he's kind of the perspective that he wants to be okay with it, or somehow find acceptance for himself. But in my experience, being around a type of behavior that goes on for that long, and I don't remember if they said how long they were together, but at some point, to me, there comes like a point where you're around it for so long that you just don't want to be around it anymore.
Yeah.
And there's not like any desire to want to change it. And at that point, obviously, there's no relationship, because if you're not willing to be around it, and you're not willing to, I guess willingness to be around it would be willingness to accept it. You're just kind of spent by it, because there's still a resistance to it. So, and I guess if you move on from that, then you'll probably attract somebody else in who will have similar tics and things that will drive you crazy.
Yes, because again, he's seeing this in her. I would like to hear what that thing is in him that's as equally as ugly. And see, he may or may not be as open to talk about that as he is to talk about his issue with her. And that's, again, using people as mirrors. See, we got to get away from the tit from tat, instead of him going, oh, I don't treat homeless people like that because I used to be one, blah, 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 blah. But see, he may judge rich people and have just as much of an issue with rich people and as much judgment as she has about the homeless guy. So see, that's what that is for him to work on. And getting back to his question, how do I navigate this? The potential only way for that to be resolved is through acceptance. And you either accept that the person, grew up this way and they want to change, and you're going to accept that they're going to fail many times. And so you got to have patience and you're going to work together. Or you accept that this person does not see that this is a problem, does not see that something needs to change, and accept that. And then, like I said, that's going to create a different role. It's a big change in values. And so it is likely, in order for him to so-called accept that, detachment is highly likely to be involved in that type of acceptance, because he's already showing what's important to him. But what would be more useful for him is to mirror that and say, okay, where do I do something similar? Not the same thing, because that's where people get stuck. Oh, I don't treat people like that. Well, that's a judgment. Where do you do something similar? That's being the investigator. And we talk about that throughout this whole philosophy in this podcast. Shifting from the judge to the investigator changes the whole vibration of all this that we're discussing. But I think this is a common theme that is more prevalent than most people realize. But in most relationships, there's one or two things that both parties are really having an issue with. And some relationships are able to discuss it and be a team and move through them, and others aren't. Maybe they're in competition, they don't realize it, or there's many other factors. But that's the beauty of conscious relationships. And when it is on par, it is an amazing experience. But this is a very tough call for him. He is more than likely taking it personal as well, because he said that he used to be homeless. So it's a double whammy there. It's not just a judgment on other people, but now he's dealing with his own insecurities as well. And that's another ding, ding, ding opportunity to work on himself by the way that it's making him feel about himself or feel about her.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up, I wanted to bring in the part about her being a high-functioning autistic person, because a lot of people would use that to kind of have compassion for her, which is a good thing. Like, you want to have compassion for the person because you don't know where they've been and what they've gone through and what has made them that way. But I feel like in our culture today, there's a lot of labeling on behavioral patterns and things like that. And I've seen many use that as an excuse, as a justification for their behavior. I can't help it. I have this or whatever. And so there's a lot to navigate there when you bring in that element. And I guess that would show you how willing that person is to change if there was a conversation where he did bring this up. And if she said, well, I'm autistic, sometimes I just don't understand those concepts or something like that.
Yeah, then that's when he can say, and that's what red light will mean, is that I want to help you. I'm not blaming you for this situation, and needing help is nothing negative. Again, if he can say, this is where I can use your help, of when I say this or when I do this, and that helps that separation or that hierarchy type of feeling. And so the most important thing is whether she can see that this is an issue and a problem in her life presently and has been throughout her life, or she's not willing to see that. So that's the big turning point. If she's just willing to see it and does want to work on it, then yes, he can be very loving to say, hey, I understand you're not going to catch yourself all the time, or maybe as much as most people can, but I'll be here and I'm here to help you, and this is how we're going to do it in a loving way. And if I just say red light, will that not trigger you? And see, she's got to be able to say, yes, if that's all you say, I can handle that. And it won't sound like you're judging me, blah, blah, blah. But if she goes, no, that sounds too aggressive, then koala bears. I mean, you come up with a phrase, whatever the phrase isn't important. It's just a recognition that when this is said, you just said or did something that was putting off or judgmental. And so I just want you to be aware of it, because first we got to be aware before we can make true change. And so see, for the first quite a while, it's just being aware of it, and she's not going to necessarily know what to do with it. She just needs to recognize hey, I do this more than I realize. That's that first step. Okay. And now I got to start looking for it before I say something is the next step. But so there's multiple levels to this lesson. That's why I would suggest that this would be a lesson that would probably take 7 years to break a full life cycle to really make a drastic amount of change in that. But he said that he doesn't want to be away from her. So see, all of this is, or leave her. So all of this is really connected to her level of interest in making the shift that he's interested in her shifting. And the way to level that out is him be vulnerable about something that he has that he needs to work on, that she could possibly help him in a similar way. And that's a beautiful partnership. Yeah.
Yeah. So it comes down to identifying whether she's open to changing or not, on how much work and acceptance you're going to have to. I mean, you have to do that anyway for him.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's good to wrap up there.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to this free full version of the Wise podcast. Now, before we get back to the episode, I just want to take a second and say, if you are loving what you're hearing, we do have a complete conversation premium subscription option where you can get all of our back 160 plus episodes to utilize and further your self-growth journey. And you can do that by going to the wisewisepodcast.com, click on the Get Complete button at the top, and follow the instructions. If you have any issues, you can reach out to me and I will help you take care of them. But this is for these serious individuals who are ready to take that next step, ready to make their self-growth journey a priority, ready to enhance their relationships all around, ready to accept the world for how it is and no longer be torn by the duality of the external reality. Oh, I like that. So if that's you, if you want to take that next step, consider supporting us on this journey and sharing this information. Now, if you're looking for a little more Alexander and maybe a private consultation, you can reach out to him at his website, thejustphilosophy.com, or email him at alexander@thejustphilosophy.com. On his website, you will see his different offerings, a variety of relationship coaching, energetic design consultations where we'll look at your human design chart and your destiny cards and provide a personal prescription for you. If you're in the North Carolina area, Alexander also has a variety of different sound journey events that are being posted on his website. He also is the inventor of the Vibertune sound therapy table, which 15 minutes on this vibrating table, listening to music that he composed, leaves you in a state of contentment. It feels like an energetic blanket has just laid upon you and you're back in the womb. It's a really great experience. So if you're in the North Carolina area and you want to reach out to him to even just ride the table, reach out to him at his email address. And of course, he has a variety of other tools and music that he's composed that you can get there. So anyway, with that said, I want to get you back to the rest of this episode and thank you for working on you.
All right, what's next?
All right. The second story, title, Am I Overreacting? Feeling utterly devastated since the results. So this is talking about the election results, which is always a hot topic.
Oh, yeah.
But it's good because people need help with this. We go through it every 4 years, and one side's not happy, and one side is happy, and both sides could use some reflecting.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everyone. I hope I'm not overreacting here, but ever since the recent election, I've been in a complete funk. It's like a dark cloud has settled over me, and I can't seem to shake it off. The moment I heard the news, I felt this overwhelming sense of despair. I mean, I know the elections have consequences, but this feels different. I've tried all my usual pick-me-ups, binge watching my favorite comedies, indulging in my go-to comfort foods, even taking long walks to clear my head. But nothing seems to help. It's as if the weight of the world is pressing down on me and I can't find a way to lighten the load. My friends and family have noticed my mood, and while some share my sentiments, others think I'm being a bit too dramatic. They say things like, it's just politics, or life goes on, but for me, it feels so much more personal. I find myself tearing up at the smallest things, and my motivation to do anything productive has plummeted. Is anyone else feeling this way? Am I overreacting to the situation, or is this a normal response? Any advice or shared experiences will be greatly appreciated. This is affecting my mental health. Thanks for listening. So I liked how well written it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like accusing anybody of anything. It's just, hey, I'm having trouble accepting, the reality of what happened. And so I think this is even just a good general refresh of acceptance of external events and things like that. Stuff that's outside of our control.
Yeah. And, and anytime she even said that anytime the phrase, "oh, I'm taking this personal," comes up, then that means that you're going to suffer. When it's very little of this world that is really personal. Everything's typically a reflection. When somebody gets angry at you, many times it has very little to do with you. It has to do with where they come from or their childhood or that kind of thing. So, see, this isn't about like whether she's right or wrong, because she's paying the cost for this level of choosing to take it personal. And that's the main thing I want to get across here, is that that's a choice. When we take things personal, that's a choice. And this is what pillar number 4 is useful for, that every person in every situation can be your teacher if you're looking for it to be your teacher. But the very first step in learning something is you have to take the personal out of it so that you can see it objectively. We call it be able to live in neutral and non-preference. And so, see, that doesn't mean that you always live in non-preference. It means that you recognize when you're in preference. And when you recognize you're in preference, you don't make major decisions at that time because they're being influenced by your preferences, which are typically your emotions. So here, yes, she's upset at the outcome, but she's likely to make herself sick when that isn't going to change anything. She's saying that she's not willing to accept this, is what these words are saying, and her body's telling her. And it's even, she said that this is affecting my mental health. So in seeing that, the very first thing is when you see something that is harming this vehicle, this physical body, you got to stop. You've got to stop doing whatever that is. Like if you're holding a hot potato in your hand, like the body don't give you even a say in it. You jerk away and you drop it. But see, mental issues and physical issues are compounded. They're over time. And so it happens a lot slower than a physical discomfort. And that's why most people pay attention to pain, and if they're willing to adjust something, many times pain is the culprit that leads them to that level of adjustment. And it certainly was in my own experience when I went through my 7-year healing cycle. And I'd like for people to get it before the pain and the major discomforts come. But if she continues in this direction, it's more than likely going to deteriorate her. And I think that's what she's aware of. But see, she wasn't really asking for help. She was asking, are there other people out there that feel this way too? So see, anytime we're in a pity party or playing victim, the first sign of that is that we want to find other people that feel the same as we do. That normally isn't going to lead to help. It's going to lead to nurturing, but it's not likely to lead to help. And so I think that's important to point that out, is that was really what she wrapped her question up about, is she's expressing.
Yeah, and the phrase that comes to mind with that is like trauma bonding,
Mm-hmm.
where people come together because they they experience a similar trauma. But I feel like those people, they just keep each other in that energy.
Yes.
Because nobody's outgrowing it.
Because the key to that is if you come together through trauma bonding, that's fine. If you spend your time together discussing what to do about it and what's working for you and what's not working and different adjustments. But yeah, most people want to relive the story over and over, and they can enjoy relating if somebody else has, been through something similar. But this is the difference between those that are looking for resolve and have a resolve outlook, is that we just need to mention the issue and maybe even cry together and have this experience. But now, ongoing, our conversations are built around what we're doing about it and what we're being successful with, where we're challenged, and basically like cheerleading and coaching each other on. That's the beauty, once again, of partnerships that we talked about even in the previous story, that when two people work together, they don't have to be intimate partners, but that's beautiful when you're working to come to a resolve. But when you're spending time just rehashing what's going on or what's gone on, again, that can be nurturing and feel good, but it doesn't bring any resolve. And then as soon as those two people separate again, there's a feeling of loneliness, there's a feeling of hopelessness, those types of things. So that's what keeps pulling people together, is that commonality. And they feel alone because they've separated them from, in my view, pillar number 2, the law of polarity versus duality, and that opposites have to exist. So if we're going to enjoy when our team wins, I suggest that we learn to enjoy when our team loses, because they have to. Whether it's a sports team or political team or whatever it is. So that's just life. This is the earth plane of polarity. Opposites have to exist. North and south poles exist. Birth and death, love and hatred, all these things exist. And here through the philosophy, we suggest that the key is acceptance, and acceptance doesn't mean condoning or approving of. That seems to be the word of the day, is this acceptance, and what that means. That simply means that I accept that this is in my reality. The more I resist it, the more suffering I'm going to have. So I'm going to accept that this is my reality now, but that doesn't have to be my reality permanently. Now, what is the resolve to shift that reality? What do I need to do is what it normally comes from. How do I need to see it differently? And then structure and discipline implemented. What do I do on a regular basis to overcome what I'm feeling right now? And there just wasn't much of that verbiage in that last letter. There was a trauma collective looking to create, but maybe she brought somebody in that had some suggestions and, was able to help her to make that shift. Even though it wasn't what she was asking for.
Yeah, and I want to differentiate some help here, because what we're offering is how to find wellness in your life. And this is going to be different from some of the opinions and advice that she's going to get from the comments. And I'm going to bring in a perspective here that I haven't read the comments, but I'm assuming that this perspective came in because it's something that I see often. Because we're talking about resistance here. She's suffering from resistance to a reality, to the election results. And she's having the resistance, or that resistance is strong because she had an emotional investment in an outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if she, brought everything she said here to somebody who was on her side, let's say, in politics, somebody who isn't being affected as much, what they would say is, okay, you just need to take that energy of, being down, and you need to change it into action energy. We need to get them back next time. We need to build back better. We need to put more people in action so that we can overcome this the next time, be more prepared. And while that is, you can see how maybe that's slightly good advice, it is also adding more energy to resistance, because now you're like, we need to overcome this more.
Mm-hmm.
And you're changing the energy from sad to competitive energy, Mars energy, overthrowing energy. So it's just a change in energy, but you're still in resistance. So you're not actually getting closer to wellness. You're just changing your focus of where that energy is going. I feel like this is
it's huge.
Very important topic to bring up, because I've been in this energy. I've and I probably still have some of this inside of me to this day, where and even talking about this is now going to bring it up, and now I'm going to be able to go back and look at my last couple of years, and have I done this personally, internally. But I know that people have told me this when I got sad about elections or sad about a sports team. There's always next year. We need to get the best quarterback. It really can be reduced to sports teams, but yeah, let's dig into that change in energy to, just building resistance, but changing it from being sad and solemn to more of a competitive Mars, rah-rah energy.
So this is where I bring in what I call the 3 R's. Recognize the person or the situation, learn to respect it, then redirect it. Okay? The middle R is the one that everybody misses. They can recognize that they got some kind of issue, and then they want to go into fixing it, like right away. But that doesn't work when you hadn't learned to truly accept it. And acceptance brings you back to a neutral of, well, of course, this has to happen from time to time because, again, this is the law of polarity. And sometimes I'm going to get candidates that I like throughout my life, and other times I'm going to get candidates that I don't like throughout my life. And the mature or wise person accepts that is the true reality throughout all of one's life. I'm going to experience some love. If I want to feel however level of love that I want to experience, then I've got to accept that level of hatred has to exist. See, it doesn't mean that you have to live in that level of hatred. It doesn't mean that you have to experience very much of it, but you got to accept that that's got to exist. See, most people that don't want to accept that level of hatred, they have a very low threshold of love that they really experience because that's safer. And so when you're able to look at this life or this experience as at these opposites have to exist, and I welcome anybody to ponder on that for quite a while, that if you can find anything in life that doesn't have an opposite, I would love to hear what that is. And if they have to exist, then we need to get out of this judgment of one is right and one is wrong. Because guess what, people? Whoever's on the red side thinks red's right, and whoever's on the blue side thinks blue's right. Both are right, both are wrong. It depends on the perception and who you're talking to. So what I'm suggesting here is you realize that both sides are part of the same bird, so to say. And you're trying to choose which side of the bird is better when it's all one bird. And when that is seen truly and just accepted, I'm going to have plenty of opportunities to practice my preferences here. And if I want to stay in consciousness and I want to stay in the highest vibration and feeding my body the optimal nutrients that it needs, then when I recognize that I have resistance to something, then I need to work on acceptance before going into any action. Because, see, if you work on acceptance and you get, okay, this is the way that it's got to be. Now, I don't need to be emotional about this. I just need to go do every day something towards supporting the view that I have. There's nothing to beat. There's nothing to overcome. It's just that whatever policies that the president is putting into effect that people have resistance to, there's plenty of groups to go join. Maybe you start a local group of a discussion group, not to tear the other side down, but to build your side up. And so, see, it's not a competition. It's just that you're feeding the view that you have, and you don't give the other view any energy, but you accept that it's there. And you accept, hey, I'm going to run into people that feel very strongly about the opposite way that I feel. I happen to feel that when you can invite that conversation in, and when you can sit for long periods of time and not be bothered by somebody else's opinion, then you're at neutral. When you don't need to speak your mind or speak your way, that's when you don't need to change somebody. That's neutral. And once you're in that neutral energy, now whatever action you go do is likely to be beneficial because it's not charged with anger. It's not charged with that competition like you were talking about. Well, let's go get another quarterback and we got next year and like all that kind of stuff of, well, that's fine to have that, but now you're setting yourself up next year for disappointment because you're going to be in hope this whole off season. And then depending on who they draft and how you or trade for or whatever, then that's going to either set you off or not. So see, now you're back at the victim of duality. That's why we say polarity versus duality. They both exist, but duality is a choice, and duality is something one energy thinks that it's better than and can change the other energy. Through fighting, wars are created through this. But those that choose to accept, again, that does not mean I condone it or approve of it. It simply means that I accept that side has to be there. Now I'm going to put all the energy I can into my side, and I'm going to have a smile on my face, and I'm going to love people as I do it. And this is just where I want to put that energy, rather than being negative, being judgmental, getting in debates and arguments. Like, all of that is just an exhaustion of energy. So that comes down to the one that's able to accept, can truly direct their energy, can truly stand in their power and not be drained. So I'm hoping that's helping some of the listeners here to make that shift, that yes, a lot of energy comes with anger, and we can make a lot of use of anger and frustration energy in building something rather than tearing something down. And I think that would be very useful for, for anybody that's listening that has these similar thoughts. And that's whether it's about the government or the healthcare system or the school system or whatever it is. There's plenty to be in distress about. Or you can just go and practice and not worry about necessarily the bad food options out there, and just educate yourself and go get the best food that you can find. That's where to put that energy. Or you can complain and argue to people that like that bad food, and that's not helping you at all. You're not likely to win them over, and you're just going to exhaust yourself. So you either have the energy to put into trying to tear that down, or you got the energy to put into developing what works better for you.
Yeah, and I think this is a new concept to a lot of people because, like myself, they're probably wondering, why would I put energy into politics if that energy isn't there? Because like a lot of the motivation to get into politics is like, I need to change something. I feel like I need to change, or something needs to change. So there's that attraction energy being pulled in there. But a lot of the people who organize the political rallies or the sides of each team or wing of government or party, they are masters at emotionally manipulating people to get them. They're stoking the emotion to get you to spend energy helping their cause.
Yep.
And that's really what it is. It's all PR.
Yep.
And it's all emotional manipulation. When you're not aware of your energy and where you're placing your energy, consciously choosing where you're going to put it, you're really just a pawn in somebody else's master game here. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not wanting to be a pawn.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably, want to work towards taking your power back and being more aware of your emotions. So I guess my question, Alexander, would be, if somebody's passion is politics, like let's say genuinely in their heart they could see a better way. I mean, like myself, like I can see all of us can see better ways of doing things. How can somebody get involved in politics while standing in their power? I know you kind of mentioned it on like a macro level, but on a micro level, what would that look like?
Well, let's take something like the U.S. food supply. Okay, let's take something like that, and I know that you're passionate. I'm passionate at different degrees about the quality of foods that are out there that are available and that kind of thing. Well, see, somebody can want to change that for the whole United States. So first of all, they would start with themselves, and they would make sure that they've cleaned up as much as they can in their diet. And then they can start educating people, whether that's videos or whether it's having classes of just spreading, once again, useful information, not tearing down information, just useful information. And then that might turn into that there's a wellness fair and that person wants to go give a talk. And so these are all steps that, like, before somebody starts trying to change the world or get behind somebody that's trying to change the world, is back up to that very first self level first. Make sure that you clean that up as absolute best that you can. Being the example is what we're talking about here. Be the example. If you're the optimal example, you will attract people that want to be inspired in that way. This is the way that I've been able to, thanks to the divine, make a living for now 17 years, is by being that example, sharing this information, and having people that hear it, that are attracted to it, to want to go deeper. So anytime somebody wants something changed on a mass scale, take it down to a personal scale and then work from that point out. And see if somebody goes the self to local to regional to statewide to, it can keep growing like in that direction. And then eventually they could possibly make change on the so-called American level. But see, they'll have that energy behind them because they've taken care of it first in themselves. So that's the first thing that one of the main things I want to suggest is anytime somebody's passionate about change externally, find out what relates to that external, internal, and work with that for a long time. And then normally the people that do make mass change, it's either determined through them jumping through hoops that people have made them jump through, or that they stuck to their value systems long enough that by inertia it shifts. And that's what Gandhi had experience with. He was part of freeing a whole nation from slavery. It took him approximately 50 years of his life. But see, he just chopped his wood and carried his water every day. And see, he was able to say, they're going to come. We're sitting in protest, and they're going to come with sticks, and they're going to hit us over our head, and we're not going to strike back. So see, that was him willing to see the opposite side, to accept that opposite side exists, and they're going to come and inflict pain. But I'm willing to say that we can make that change if we don't fight back. That is solidarity right there. And so I think that, I'm not getting into individual. Many people have different views of Gandhi and that kind of thing, but I'm talking personally, but I'm talking about the work that he did. That's what I'm talking about here, and the effort and the time that it took to make that type of change. So somebody that wants to see the world change or see America change, then they should be willing to put 50 years in, because it's what's important to them. But let's take care of it at every step before that step, and then it's highly likely that step will be taken care of.
Yeah, so what you're describing is like the grassroots approach to things. And I mean, you can look at it like with medical marijuana through the states. It's taken years of consistent effort and education to change the culture and the understanding of that. And even, still some states aren't there yet. But yeah, I agree, because everybody wants things changed now. Mm-hmm. And so they look at the presidential election as, we need this to go our way, or things aren't going to be that way. But yeah, if you start local, then you can change your local environment, because that's really a lot of the laws that you live within are dictated within that. So you can make
I feel
change.
Like if people are going to be political, start local. And that's where you're going to be affected most and have the most effect, and then move out from there. But the very start is the self, and cleaning up all the cobwebs and the corners. And many times that requires having somebody else that's able to hold you accountable, somebody that you trust and can confide in, because we're habitual liars to ourselves. We justify, and justification, I like to say, was the biggest Achilles heel that the divine gave us, is that we can justify in our mind just about anything, and that can either be useful or detrimental for ourselves and for our relationships. And so the justification process really gets in the way of wisdom and growing. And that's why many times it is very useful to have somebody external that you can run this stuff by and say, hey, what have you seen? Have you seen me fail at this? And be willing to listen to what they have to say. That's truly the person I feel like that's on the path and really wants that shift and that change to happen. Is they're not just going to hold themselves accountable, but they're going to ask somebody else to even hold them accountable. And that certainly has worked for me in the past drastically. I don't just rely on myself. That's tricky ground.
And to wrap this story up and this episode, I did want to bring back in polarity versus duality, because this is something that I was able to tap into when I was working on myself and my resistance to politics and the other side. Because I can see this clearly now. When you put energy into resisting something, and you talk in a way where you're tearing down the other side, you're actually building the other side. So you're actually doing the opposite of what you want. So if you want the other side to stop getting energy and winning elections, then you need to stop tearing them down and focus on your own house, because the more energy that you put into resisting them, the more that they're growing. Based on physics. So I don't know if you want to get into that, because I feel like if people understood that would bring everything back to the individual. That would bring everything back to them focusing on their side and just focusing on their own truth and whatever information they wanted to bring in, versus these, childish, arguments that nobody's listening, and it fuels both sides, really.
Yes. I mean, that's where you can either spend your energy trying to prove something wrong, or you can spend your energy working to prove something right. And it takes the same amount of energy either way. The thing is that when you get groups of people that want to focus on what's wrong, that builds animosity. It builds anger. It can build rage. It can get out of control, to where if you build in towards what you want to build, that's going to build love and compassion and communication, and nothing dangerous that I know of on that side. When you're operating out of polarity, when you're operating out of duality, the so-called good can turn bad really, really fast. Like a lot of cops out there, I'm thankful for everybody that gives service that way. But there are some that go into it with the best of intentions, and then they see how unfair that it is for the good guys and the so-called bad guys. So then many times some policemen will start bending the rules, justifying it to catch this person. But see, they don't understand from an energetic standpoint, you're feeding the cheating, the betrayal, all of that energy. You're playing their game their way. And the light doesn't blend with darkness. The darkness flees the light. So see, when you start looking and justifying things in that way, you're feeding that other energy, the energy that you want to eliminate. So that's why, integrity is so important. That integrity to me just symbolizes that, hey, I've got a path, and I accept that people and things are going to try to take me off my path. And my integrity is that I be willing to listen. I be willing to process information that is given to me, but stay diligent on my direction and not get distracted by trying to prove to people that aren't in alignment with your path. And this happens over and over again. And so when you really get into conserving your energy and seeing the energetic level at all 5 of these levels, as important as the physical, the mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual, then you start treasuring your energy field more than money or anything else, recognition. And that's when you're more apt to shift these perceptions of what you're putting your energy into, tearing something down or building something up. And I think this is good for our listeners to hear, because if there's a somebody out there that you've got a different view of and they're in power, then simply find ways to practice your view, to share your view, to get your view more well known. And you really don't even need to involve that other energy, or that other person or situation. So I think this whole episode has been a good, both stories around acceptance seems to be the current word. And, make acceptance isn't a belief. It's a truth. And there's a big difference between truths and opinions or preferences or that kind of thing. So anyway, hope this is useful. We've got plenty of examples here about how people can do their internal work, and better results come from better actions that begin with a perception shift.
Yeah, well said, Alexander. And if you guys want to dive deeper into the topics and the tools and techniques that we discuss here on the Wise podcast, if you want to dive deeper into the Just philosophy, we have 170 plus episodes available at your fingertips. We do have a Wise complete conversation subscription that you can go to thewisewise.podcast.com, click the button in the upper right corner called Get Complete, and you'll be on your way to a lot of that information. And then, of course, there is private consultations with Alexander. He does relationship consulting, individual self-growth journeying, and all that good stuff can help to bring some consciousness into your life and hold you accountable if that's what you're looking for.
Much love, beautiful people. Keep chopping your wood and carrying your water. And thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.